2024 Candidates Night. This event is being broadcast live by Westford Community Access TV on local cable and is available in live stream on YouTube. This event is also being recorded and will be made available on WestfordCAT, YouTube, and the League's website. We would like to thank the WestfordCAT for being a part of this evening and taking care of all that electronic stuff. The League of Women Voters of Westford is a nonpartisan grassroots organization of peoples of all ages, genders, and backgrounds. The League's goal are to encourage active and informed participation in government, increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. To learn more or to become a member of the League, please visit our website at lwv.westford.org. Now I'd like to turn things over and introduce our moderator for this evening, Heather McNeil, who comes to us from the North Andover League. We've had the pleasure of Heather's moderation before and are happy to welcome her back.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, welcome here this evening. As stated, my name is Heather McNeil. I'm actually a resident of North Andover, but do voter service work for the North Andover League. So welcome to tonight's Candidates Forum. If at any point you cannot hear myself or the candidates, if you're in the back, if you could, speak louder. You might see a sign up there that says speak louder, there it is, or you can wave to us. The microphones here are just for the live recording. They do not project your voice into the room, so please speak clearly. Election day in Westford is Tuesday, May 7th. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. with voting at either Westford Academy or the Stony Brook Middle School, depending on your precinct. Vote by mail is available for this election. You can request a mail-in ballot online or contact the town clerk's office. Here comes a phone number, 978-692-5515, or via email, which is townclerk@westfordma.gov. Voters can also vote early in person at the town clerk's office at specific designated times from Monday, next Monday, April 29th, through Friday, May 3rd. The deadline to register to vote in this town election is tomorrow, April 26th at 5 p.m. You can register to vote at the town clerk's office or online at the Secretary of State's website. All of this information about registering and voting in town election, as well as information on all of the candidates, can be found in the LWV's voter guide, which is available online at the League's website, which is lwv.westford.org. The event tonight is a forum, not a debate, so candidates will be addressing the audience and you, the voters, not one another, by answering questions that were submitted prior to tonight's event and by those here in the audience this evening. So, as we go through this evening, the audience does have the opportunity to submit questions. If you are here in person, questions can be written on index cards. If you need an index card, just wave your hand and one will be brought to you along with a pencil. And then when you are finished writing your question, you can just hold up your card and someone will collect it. If you are at home watching on the live stream, questions can be submitted now via the question submission form on the League website. Again, that's lwv.westford.org. So get your questions in early, as obviously we can only take questions for the current panel or the panels that are coming up in the future. All questions must be addressed to all of the candidates for that panel, and questions may be combined or edited or revised with the goal of asking as many questions and covering as many topics as we can. So, with that said, there will not be enough time tonight to ask all the questions that have been submitted. There have already been at least 65 questions submitted to the League before this evening. So we have only time for about 25 questions in total. So in choosing which questions to ask, the League strives again to cover a variety of topics. If you don't hear your question tonight, I would encourage you to reach out directly to the candidates and get the information that you need before heading to the polls. So let's get started. Our first panel will feature the candidates for library trustees and planning board, which are both uncontested races. There are also candidates running unopposed for one seat on the Board of Health. Joanne Belanger is that candidate, and one seat on the Housing Authority, Patty Doobie, who are not in attendance tonight, but I believe you can find information about them in the voter guide. Okay. So candidates, you will each have 2 minutes for opening statements, and you will each have 1 minute to answer a question. There will be no time for rebuttals this evening, so keep your eyes on our timekeeper up the front there. She will show you how much time you have left, and also when you see that it says stop, please kind of wrap up your sentence and then we'll move on. Okay, so again, our goal is to cover as many topics as we can. So we will begin tonight by hearing from the unopposed candidates. If you have any questions for these candidates who are up here right now, please wave them so we can pick them up. And we will first hear from the two library trustees, Mary Ann Fleckner and Deborah Teal. They are both running for 2 3-year seats on that board. And you will both have 2 minutes for your opening statements, and again, 1 minute to answer questions. So welcome to you both. And we will begin with you, Mary Ann.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
So good evening. As Heather had mentioned, my name is Mary Ann Fleckner, and I am running again for library trustee. And I am obviously a resident of Westford. I've been here for about 35 years, and for many of you, that's a short time, and I can respect that. And my husband and now my grown son grew up in Westford and went through the Westford school system. So totally appreciate and respect the time and energy that many people put in to make our community so awesome as it is. And I'm running for library trustee because, for the simple reason, I love libraries. And the reason why for that is because so many memories growing up is the library. And it's a place where no matter where you are figuratively, you can be anywhere in the world with the books and the materials and everything a library has to offer. And as a child, if you are maybe lost in different ways, the library is such a safe haven, and it brought me so much joy, and that's why I want to give back however I can. Professionally as a library trustee, we are also responsible for policies, budget, operations, working alongside the library director and her staff. As my job for the past 45 years, I've worked for the Commonwealth. I currently work for a nearby municipality where I'm responsible for administration and finance. So my current and my past year's role lends quite well to what we're responsible for as library trustees. I also want to add that going back to what the library offers is that about 2 years ago, I can't believe it's been 2 years, my granddaughter, who was 19 months at the time, she was, well, she broke her leg, she was in a full body cast, and Thomas the Tank in the Children's Library saved us. And the friends are awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deborah?
Okay, hi, good evening. My name is Deborah Teal, and I'm a retired history, social studies teacher and a resident of Westford for almost 30 years. I was appointed to serve an unexpired term on the Library Trustee Board in September, and am now running to serve for 3 more years. The library has always been an important part of our family life, and actually was one of the reasons that we actually bought the house at its location, because we are able to walk to the library. Growing up, our 2 daughters spent many hours at the library, and now I am thrilled to be able to spend time with my 2 grandsons at the library. I have been involved with many volunteer activities during my time in Westford, such as co-producer for Blanchard Productions' annual musicals from 1998 to 2001. I was a founding member of the Stage Crew, which was a support and fundraising effort for Westford Academy Theater Arts, and a member of the Board of Directors for the Westford Youth Basketball Association. Because of my involvement in education, I understand the importance of maintaining a public library that is able to meet the needs of the town's population. We are very fortunate to have an excellent staff at the library and a strong volunteer organization, the Friends of the J.V. Fletcher Library, to serve the needs of the public with their expertise and funding of programs. With the library expansion project, we will be able to continue with these countless efforts and services for many years to come. I believe I bring to the position of library trustee the ability to work as part of a team to reach the common goal of supporting and developing plans to continue to present the best possible library to the town.
Thank you very much. So we'll now begin with questions, and Deborah, you'll have the first question. You'll have 1 minute to answer. So how will the library's operations and services for residents be impacted if the override does or doesn't pass? So if it does pass, what will happen? If it doesn't pass,
If it
what will
does
happen?
pass, then we will continue to offer the services that we have, as well as we move forward with the expansion project. And so there would be no interruption of services for the town of Westford. If it doesn't pass, we will be impacted. It will impact what's called the municipal appropriations requirement for the library, and it will bring us about $71,000 below what we need to maintain for the library, which will then have an impact on how we are able to utilize other libraries within the consortium in the Commonwealth. So it will certainly have a very negative effect, and that's only year one. If we go into year two without that budget, then it continues to just multiply as far as how deep we will get out of being in compliance with those requirements.
Mary Ann?
Sure. Very similar answer as Deb is that if the override passes, is that our continued services that we provide to the community continues in an excellent high-level manner. And the hours that we're open for students, for seniors, adults, the children's programs, everything that the library offers to our community. And if the override does not pass, as Deb had mentioned, the municipal appropriation requirement is key. And if we are $71,000 under, which we will be, is that the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners that oversees the library expansion grant will not allow us to continue if we are not in certification, if we're not certified. And we would have to take drastic measures if we're not certified.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the next question will go to you, Mary Ann, first. And I believe one of you mentioned the expansion. What is the timeline for starting the expansion and moving the library to a temporary location? And then how will services be impacted at that new location?
Sure. Hopefully, it will be seamless, and services will continue at a new location. We are required, past times, if folks remember, 1986 to 89, we were able to stay in the building. Understandably so, is that the Mass Board of Library Commissioners does not allow that anymore, so we are canvassing other places. But again, with Ellen Rainville and the staff, I am confident it will be seamless. And with that as well is that and I apologize, the other part of the question was the beginning.
How?
Okay, so fiscal year 27 is when we're going out to bond. It's excluded debt for those that are familiar with borrowing. And so we will go out to bond for fiscal year 27, and we're hoping that it will be approximately a 24-month, 36-month turnaround time for the building to be completed.
Okay. Deborah?
So I would echo what Mary Ann has said, that we are on budget. We are on sort of moving forward with the design and development of the building and looking for a groundbreaking for the new building around January of 2025. And as Marianne said, we do have to relocate to another location in town, and that is all being handled very well by Ellen and the staff at the library. They are busy, even at right now, sorting, deciding what are the books that are going to go, what are the resources that are going to move to this temporary location. And at this point, we're looking at occupancy in December or January of 2027.
Okay, thank you. So one last question. There are questions about whether the library expansion project should be delayed. Do you agree with that or not agree with that? And that would go to you, Deborah, first.
Well, because we have received grant money from the state and from the library board, we have to, we've already spent some of that money, so delaying it is really not an option, and we have to now move forward. This is a project that has been voted on several times within the town. This is not a project that was entered into lightly. It was researched. We were fortunate enough to get this grant. So about 10 million of this budget, which is about 32 million for the building of the library, will be funded by outside sources. And those sources, if we were to delay, would go away. And so then that would leave us with not being able to move forward. And any type of, other, if we didn't do the whole expansion, any other renovations would then kick in the idea of we have to come under compliance with many things where we are not at this point.
Thank you, Marianne. Do you have anything to add?
I would absolutely underscore what Deb said. In addition, is that most of us, and I as well, would think that, we could just apply again. And we literally cannot, because the rules have changed after we have been granted this grant. And as Deb mentioned, we are very fortunate. It was a 2-for-1 grant. So we're receiving a little under $10 million through fundraising and also from the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. And that does not come easily. And the reason why I say will not happen again, because 1999 was when we first started the project to look at septic and look at the expansion for 5-year capital. And you think about the number of years it takes to get us here, and that cannot happen again because of the new rules and regulations. And so the $32 million, as Deb mentioned, 22 million of that would be excluded debt, but 10 million is coming our way.
Thank you both very much. We will now, you're off the hook, and we will now hear from our candidate, Michael Bonifant. Did I say it right?
You did.
Awesome. Who is running unopposed for one 5-year term on the planning board. So welcome. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the league for having us out, and thank you all for coming out. Again, my name is Michael Bonifant. I am running for planning board. I am the incumbent. I'm currently the chair of the planning board. As for my background, I've lived in town my whole life. I grew up on Flag Road, where my folks still live. I now live in beautiful downtown Nabnasset. My wife and I have 4 children. I have a WA graduate who's a junior at Norwich University. I have a WA senior. I have a WA sophomore and an 8th grader at Stony Brook. I'm a practicing attorney with an office on Route 40, and I also operate a Community Title V inspections, which was a business started by my father in town in the 80s. When I meet new people, and they learn I'm from town, they often ask, what I think of the changes in town that I've seen throughout the year. Obviously, things are much different. My response has been that, as I don't like change, it's inevitable, right? The town is going to grow, and it's up to us in the town for responsible growth and to manage the growth. I've witnessed countless projects come before planning board where there are large opposition against what the project and people complaining, and then the project's over and those people disappear. I ran originally and I'm rerunning again to help see if we can manage the growth and grow this town responsibly. I like development, 110 Route 40, keep the center of the middle of the town is more residential. And that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So we have a few questions for you. So how will the planning board's operations and services for residents be impacted if the override does or does not pass?
I don't believe there'll be much impact in the planning board. I haven't seen any of the budget. We have an incredible land use office. I'm unaware of any cuts that are being proposed, and I could be wrong with that office, but Jeff Morissette and his team are invaluable to this town. I am hopeful it doesn't affect us, because that would be a great loss to us.
Okay, this question is about technology. Do you support the planning board adopting technology that would enable residents to remotely participate in meetings as other boards do?
That's a great question, and it's a ripe question. So, the planning board has responsibility of the public hearing process, and in my opinion, it's a little more legally sensitive than other boards and commissions, in that you have an applicant and it has to go through a public hearing process, and everybody has to have the opportunity to raise questions, bring their comments to us. We don't have a policy or procedure in town yet that allows, say, technology drops. Do we have to cancel the hearing? We don't know, and we haven't got an opinion from town council or policy from our select board that says, okay, the public hearing can continue, or it has to stop and be restarted if technology fails. So I can't support it at this time because I'm afraid of the integrity of the public hearing process. Now, that doesn't mean that if we do have a foolproof system and we do have policies and procedures in place that make sure the integrity of the public hearing is intact, that my opinion won't change. So at this point, I can't support it the way we are currently.
Okay. And one more question. So how does the new proposed firearms business bylaw differ from last year's version? And do you support it? Why or why not?
Another great question. It differs significantly. The bylaw that ended up going to town meeting last year had a lot more restrictions in the number of licenses. It affected the gun clubs. This new bylaw, which has been requested by the chief that the planning board support, basically says that we cannot have a gun shop within a certain distance of a school or within a certain distance of another gun shop. The purpose of that is to make sure that there isn't, what had happened in another town, basically a mill with 80 licenses serving the community. So I am for less restriction. I believe that it should be market-driven. There is no bylaw in town now. There are no gun shops in town now. However, I do support the chief's requests to have the separation between the licenses.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you to these candidates for running for library trustees and planning board. Audience, please remain seated while the second panel of candidates who are running for the select board come forward. This would be a good time to pass in any questions if you're here in the audience or at home for the select board candidates. And please give these candidates a round of applause. Yeah, thank you. Okay, okay. Gotcha. All set? Okay. During our second panel, you will be hearing from the candidates for Select Board. They will each give a 2-minute opening statement in alphabetical order by last name, and then we will ask a series of questions and give the candidates 1 minute to answer each question. You will also both have 1-minute closing statements. Again, we will not have time to ask all the questions, so please reach out to them if you don't hear your question answered. Candidates, please remember to address the audience and speak loudly enough. Our timekeeper is right up front here, so keep your eye on her as well. This year's candidates are John Cunningham and Megan O'Connell. They are each running for 1 3-year term on the Select Board. And John, we will begin with you with 2-minute opening statements.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present my qualifications to continue as a member of your Select Board and to answer your questions on the major challenges facing our town. I got to speak up louder. Em and I moved to Westford 29 years ago. This was 4 years after completing a 26-year career as an Air Force civil engineering officer and commander. That carried me to 7 states, some more than once, and 2 foreign countries, including Vietnam, ending as a base commander at Edwards Air Force Base in California, retiring in 1990 as a colonel. We then moved to New York, where I began a second career managing construction projects for IBM. We moved to Westford in 1994, where I continued work as a principal project manager for a major A&E firm in Boston, working on various projects for IBM in New York and California, capital purchasing for Polaroid, Director of Global Utility Purchasing for Imperial Chemical Industries of London, England, and later as a project manager on security checkpoints at 4 major airports in New England and during the early days of Homeland Security. I began my work for the town in 2004 with 1 semester as a substitute teacher at Westford Academy, Blanchard, and Stony Brook, and continued when I started work on town committees, beginning with the Comprehensive Master Plan in 2005, where we developed a plan that has guided town leadership in the better part of 15 years since approval by annual town meeting in 2009. Inspired by the hard work and selflessness of the members, I volunteered to work on other committees that over the succeeding years reached a total of 11, including my current stand with the Select Board. Other committees included Conservation Commission for 9 years, Capital Planning for 9, and Public Works for 6. I would like to continue using my experience, especially that working on town committees, to help you resolve the current budget situation, develop ways to prevent recurrence, and to limit taxes as much as possible while providing essential services to the town, especially public safety and education of our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Megan?
My name is Megan O'Connell, and I'm challenging John for the Select Board seat. Why? I believe that one of the jobs of the Select Board is to ensure that policies and decisions made take into consideration all Westford residents. I don't believe that the incumbent, John, has worked to do that. Many people are frustrated with the current Prop 2.5 override campaign. To many people, it appears the Select Board has not done nearly enough to drive level service cost savings, or at least to provide tax relief for those less fortunate. I'm a biomedical engineer by training, and have worked since the mid-90s in various quality roles in medical device and pharmaceutical companies. In my line of work, I need to balance the needs of seemingly at odds stakeholders. It requires a thorough understanding of risk management, negotiation, and being able to listen to the various stakeholders and understand what they really need. Only then can solutions be proposed and implemented. I truly believe this is a skill that is sorely needed on our Select Board. Many people look at this override issue as one side against the other. It doesn't have to be that way. A yes win doesn't have to result in people being taxed out of their homes, and a no win doesn't have to mean that the schools will suffer, though either result will require leadership from the Select Board. Back in 2005, another override attempt here in Westford failed. That was for $3 million primarily for the schools. Has the quality of the schools deteriorated since then? No. Have our home values deteriorated since then? No. In fact, within days of that failed override, the Finance Committee restored all but $200,000 of that school budget deficit. The current FY25 school budget request with an override versus without an override is a difference of $2.5 million. So where could we make up that difference if it's rejected? There are many ideas, but the bottom line is that the Finance Committee report just issued shows that we will end FY25 with over $3 million in free cash above the recommended minimum. What does that mean? We can fully fund the schools at the override budget level and say no to the override by using those excess reserves and buy ourselves 1 year to work on cost savings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the first question will go to you, Megan, and it is, do you support the override? Why or why not? Do you want to add any other details?
I do not support the override for many of the reasons that I just spoke about. That when you look at the budget task force report that was issued back in October, I believe, they listed over a dozen suggestions on both how to raise more revenue or drive more efficiencies, save costs, and the only avenue being pursued has been the override. And I think a lot of residents are frustrated at that. And we've heard from some people, over the last month that, we need to pass this and then we'll start looking at other ways to save money. But because there has been a lot of time to prepare for this, we've known about high inflation for over 2 years now. We knew this budget crisis was coming. And because the select board hasn't implemented any other cost savings programs since then, people are frustrated and want to send a message, reject the override, and force those savings first. So yes, I'm against the override.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I do support the override. And we may have some discussions about just how much of an override. That's the annual town meeting's decision. But I support it because I see the consequences to be draconian in effect. In other words, we would lose a significant number of teachers and some security personnel. So I do support the override. I think that we can take the override, take the lessons we've learned with this, and make some modifications in what I consider systemic increases that we're not usually aware of. There's some embedded cost in some of the contracts that we have that need to be addressed. And we may need to come up with a solution that says we're going to be doing an override, frequently, not too frequently, but we just have the embedded costs that are going to force that. But I do support the override.
Okay. Thank you. So the next question will go to you, John, first. Whether or not the override passes, what are the next steps for the select board to ensure that our town can meet the needs of all residents?
Well, we have to look for sources of new funding. We're looking at that. Some of the things, well, we need to press for just a system that says that we have a regular addressable of these systemic costs. We need to reduce those. We need to have an honest dialogue between us, the school committee, and other cost centers to make sure that we can at least address this, know what's coming, predict it, and minimize the impact to the taxpayer.
Thank you. Megan?
That's a great question. What I didn't hear is, if the override passes, what are we going to do for those residents that can't afford it? Because there are a lot of people that will affect, that it may actually push them out of town. That's going to be a more difficult thing to answer if the override passes. But there are tools available from the state to address that. One I've talked about before may not be particularly well received, but there's a residential exemption that could be used. And very briefly, it's a state law that allows towns to implement this for owner-occupied homes. It can be anywhere between 10 and 35% of the average home value. The key things are that it does not decrease tax receipts to town. The tax revenue remains the same, but anyone in a lower valued home will get tax relief. So that's how I would address that.
Okay. All right. Our next question has to do with our bond rating. So as a select board member, would you prioritize maintaining Westford's bond rating? And do you think the override would have any impact on that? And John, that's for you first. Oh, I'm sorry, Megan, that's for you first. Apologize.
Okay. Our bond rating is important. That's clear. I don't think it's the most important thing to the town right now. What I don't know and what I would have to look into is what, if the bond rating fell, what effect that would have on borrowing rates for the town, and use that to make an informed decision about, whether, for instance, with the free cash and the $3 million over the 5% minimum that's recommended, it would be a judgment call as to, is it better and introduce less risk to tap into fewer of those reserves to maintain a AAA rating? Or would it be better for the town and the residents as a whole to tap into that a little bit more than the 5% if it means going down to, say, AA? But that really has to do with digging into the details of what effect that would have on the borrowing rate. So it's not an absolute answer.
John?
Yes, I think we need to address the bond rating not as kind of one of the things that we have to maintain. I'm appreciative of having a AAA bond rating, but if push comes to shove, I think we should tap into the rainy day fund or the stabilization fund and relieve the taxpayers from some of this abrupt, tax increase that we see forthcoming.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next one will go to you, John, first. What is your position on the proposed MBTA zoning bylaw and why?
Okay. Well, I propose, I support the zoning bylaw. I have to confess, I was the chairman of the committee that recommends this. When we look at it, you could go with the minimum, which is 924 housing units. I know that we're looking at the potential, according to the state, of at least 4,000. But what we realized is if you designate one unit and just go with the minimum, then the chances are getting anything done, it could happen. This does not say that we have to build it to 924. We have to develop an overlay district that allows it. And so we do that. It allows us, the way it is constructed now, the flexibility to determine where it is, what the quality is, and it does provide, affordable housing. There's a provision for that. And it does provide the multifamily housing that I think we desperately need for young people, seniors, and those that want to make changes in their lives.
Thank you. Megan?
I don't support the proposed zone and overlay as it stands right now. And the primary reasons, there's a number of them. I'll try to fit them in a minute. But no, John's right. No, it says it would fit up to 4,800 units. It would actually be less than that for a number of reasons, and he's correct in that. The significant problem I see are, again, multiple. So if you look at, what I think is a comparable development, like Princeton, it's a 200-unit apartment building. There are about 78 students, and if you look at the per student cost and the tax revenue that brings in, there's a definite deficit of 800,000 units just on that development. So my primary concern is that even if only a quarter of those units are built, 1,000 units, we could be looking at an additional $4 million deficit in a few short years. So I think while it's commendable to want to bring in low-income housing, I think we need to be very judicious and careful about how we introduce that. So I don't support it as written.
Thank you very much. So Megan, this will go to you first. We're going to move on to firearms businesses. So what is your position on the proposed firearm business zoning bylaw and why?
I haven't looked at the exact bylaw as proposed now. I opposed the one last fall. My understanding of the current one is that it will only have a requirement for a minimum separation between firearm businesses and perhaps schools. Still, I would oppose it. I would oppose it for a number of reasons. One is that, we need to work on rebuilding our business base here, our commercial base. And I don't think it's the right message to be implementing new bylaws. As someone mentioned earlier, we don't have any bylaw right now, and we haven't had a firearm business in here for years. So I don't think implementing a bylaw for a potential, which is a constitutionally protected right, by the way, in an environment where our business tax revenues have gone from 14% to, I believe, 10% over a few years. It's the wrong direction.
John?
Yeah, I support the new bylaw. I supported the original one. I don't think that this bylaw as constructed impinges on the amendment rights of any owner. I think it provides us a little bit of a cushion so that we don't have a congregation of gun shops all in one place. It provides some of the same separation things that we've provided for the medical marijuana issue. I do like the idea of ensuring the gun clubs are not excluded from doing their business, and so I've supported the new one as it's changed.
Okay, Thank you very much. So John, this one will go to you first. What are your views on the roadmap to net zero 2050? Recognizing the town's current financial challenges, would you support upfront investments for green initiatives? And then I'll have a follow-up question, but I'll leave it that for that.
Yeah, I think the climate map provides us a real good roadmap to getting where we need to be in 2050. There's some other things. There's some things coming up like we prescribed the stretch code. Now we're going to be looking at some of the special code. We're looking at becoming a climate leader. Those are coming before the select board in the next few months, and we're going to have an initiative or an article, I think, on the special town meeting in October that actually helps us get toward moving toward a climate leader. I think we can do it. I think we can do it responsibly. I think we can do it without straining the budget. I think we can take advantage of the grants that we have. But climate change is coming. We need to address it. And I think the climate roadmap is a good start.
Okay. A follow-up question from someone in the audience. Do you have anything else you want to add about the specialized stretch energy code, opting in or not?
Well, I have one concern about it. I do know that it's specific about housing 4,000 square feet and above, and there are some stringent requirements for insulation and going electrical. I think that one of the concerns I do have with it is that it specifies that once we opt in, there are going to be changes in the future, and if we opt in, we're signing up for those changes. I just don't know what they are. Mm-hmm. I think that I think it's a way to go. I think we need to do it, but we need to keep an eye on it and make sure that we do it within reason. Because we've got to do this gradually. There's going to be a transition. We can't do it all at once. We got to make sure that, for example, in vehicles, yeah, we need to change them to electrical, but we need to transition into that gradually and don't try to do it all at once and then extreme costs. And we also need to make provisions that allow us to do some of the climate change initiative, but not necessarily right now. Do it later.
Okay. So Megan, you have up to 2 minutes. So what are your views on the roadmap to net zero 2050? And then if you want to comment some more on the specialized stretch energy code.
Okay. So to be perfectly honest, I haven't read that roadmap in detail, so I can only talk in generalities. What I would say is that I look at it similar to the earlier question about the AAA bond rating, that it's good to maintain that, but it's not the most important goal, and it needs to be balanced against the needs of all the residents right now, especially when we're in this budget crisis. And so I look at the roadmap to net zero in a similar light, that it's a great goal, and we need to consider that when we make decisions, especially over the next few years as we make decisions about how we can save money or cut costs. But it's not the only consideration. No, an example is, I've been talking frequently recently about bringing the school bus in-house and potentially saving $750,000 per year. And when I've talked about that with some people on certain committees in town, the immediate thought was, oh, that's a great time to go to electric buses. Except by doing that, erases the entire savings. So that's what I talked about, and that's one thing I think about when I said earlier that I have a background in risk management. Yes, it's a great goal, but it can't be held up as the only one or the most important thing. It needs to be balanced, again, with the very real needs of the residents and being able to afford to stay in town. As far as the stretchy building code, I think it's a good thing to aim towards. I would not be in support of requiring it, but perhaps there's a way we could encourage that.
Thank you very much. So Megan, this question will go to you first. This is from the audience. How would you promote or expand programs to provide assistance to residents who are having difficulties paying their property taxes?
That's a great question. And so, as many people know, there are a number of programs already available, particularly for low-income people or above a certain age. The problem I see with those is that it only addresses a very narrow group of people, and there are a lot of people that don't qualify for those that really are struggling. People that are still working, that have families that are really struggling. That's one of the reasons I've brought up the idea of this residential exemption, which again may seem like a foreign concept, and there's not a lot of towns in the state that have it. I think about 20. But one thing to consider is that Concord, of all towns, implemented it last year for a lot of the same reasons we're seeing here, that lower income residents really need that relief, and this is a tool that's available now to do that, but only the select board can adopt it.
Thank you very much. John?
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, we've been looking at that. We now currently are trying to maximize the exclusions or the relief for seniors, veterans. There's a CPA provision. And there's some considerations under state law now. They're looking at maybe giving towns a little bit more flexibility in doing this. So we're going to examine, and I recommend examining all the avenues we have to relieve, the citizens that are under stress because of the increases in taxes.
Very good. Okay, our next question is, we'll go to you, John, first. As a select board member, how would you heal divisions and promote trust in town government and encourage residents to work respectfully for the good of the community?
Well, that's a real good question. I mean, I think, first of all, we need to set the example in the select board of doing just that. I think we can reach out a little bit better to various groups and listen. That's what we need to do, just listen to them and understand what the issues are. Yeah, we are a little bit fractured, and I think we need to come together a little bit better. I don't know how we would do it other than set the example and encourage it.
Okay, Megan?
That is a great question. And I wish I had the perfect answer for that. I don't know if it exists, to be honest with you, but it's going to be a very real concern. I did talk earlier about how I believe the town can move forward with both rejecting the override and giving the schools the budget they need. And it's not an ideal solution. And that certainly won't heal all the division within the town, but I think it would go a long way. However the vote ends up on Saturday on May 7th, to me that's the primary thing that the town and the select board needs to focus on, is how do we reach out to, let's say, the losing side and make sure that their needs are still met. And I think I've talked about that a little bit earlier. But as far as setting an example, I think the boards need to do a better job of soliciting more people to get involved. And like I said, I don't have the perfect answer for it right now, but.
Well, in that same vein, with you, Megan, first, this will be our last question. How would you promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in appointments to town boards and committees?
That's also a great question. One thing that I would like to see is a little more transparency in the citizen petition form process. I know myself, I've submitted them several times for various boards, have never been reached out by anyone to follow up on that. For whatever reason, I have no idea. But I'd like to see some transparency in how that process works. And perhaps, when a form comes in, maybe identifying data, name and address comes off, and you just see their statement going to the chair of the board for evaluation. And again, I think it would be great for the select board to have periodic reports about how often these are coming in and the actions that the various boards are taking on them. But I think that might be one thing we can do now is, when that citizen action form comes in, strip off the name and address and forward just that narrative to the committee.
Thank you very much. John?
Yeah, I think we need to work more closely with the DEI committee as well as the school DEI committee to understand exactly what's going on. We haven't had a report recently that would give us that information. But we need to understand there's several things. I know a lot of events are going on. We're doing a lot to encourage various groups to to support them. But I think we need to know a little bit more about the systemic issues that are going to come up, and we don't have that understanding yet. We need to look for that, and get more frequent updates on it, and then push forward to make sure that we do have the inclusion that we need in our community.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. We're now going to have closing statements. So John, we'll start with you, and you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Okay. I want to thank the League of Women Voters again for hosting the candidates night, the other candidates for running for office and participating in this event, and special thanks to the audience for your insightful and challenging questions. I know how we got here. I understand the pressures that drive us. Taxes higher. I will dedicate my efforts to mitigating future increases while supporting our schools, students, teachers, and families who have shown a remarkable resilience and flexibility in the past and who are now faced with another challenge, dealing with extraordinary cost increases in cost of living and potential tax increases. We all want the same thing for our community, a safe, welcoming, and prosperous town. With the ultimate goal in mind, and by treating each other with consideration, understanding, and respect, we will get there. I would be honored to continue serving you as a member of your select board, continually to thoroughly examine the issues, treat everyone with respect, and vote with your best interest in mind. I encourage everyone to vote on May the 7th, and I respectfully ask for your vote. Best wishes for the future. Be safe and stay well.
Thank you. Megan?
The question to ask before casting your vote for the select board is this: is the town in a better position now than it was 3 years ago? I think the answer is no. We've had several years now seeing this budget crisis coming, with the Budget Task Force report last fall listing over a dozen ideas to raise revenue or drive efficiencies and cost savings. The only avenue being pursued has been the override. While it may be the easy route, it has directly led to the divisiveness over these last few months. It is possible to both say no to the override and fully fund the schools. Is it ideal? No, of course not, but it meets the basic needs of most residents, and most importantly, it buys us a year to get serious about implementing multiple ideas to cut costs, drive efficiencies, and raise revenues. Most importantly, it preserves the schools at the override level and ensures that no resident is forced to move out of their home because of a large tax increase, and that's if we tap into the cash reserves. We can do this, but it takes your votes on May 7th to start healing this town. I ask for your vote on May 7th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to these candidates running for Select Board. Audience, please remain seated while the third and final panel of candidates this evening who are running for school committee come forward. This is a good time to pass in any questions you have for the school committee, and please give them a round of applause. We're just waiting for our timekeeper. So you have a minute to get settled. And here she is. So welcome back. We will now hear from the candidates for school committee. They will each give a 2-minute opening statements, as the other candidates did, in alphabetical order by last name, and they will have 1-minute closing statements and 1 minute to answer each question. As with the other panels, I'll try to ask as many questions as I can, but if you don't hear your question asked, you can certainly reach out to the candidates before the election. Candidates, please remember to look at the timekeeper and keep an eye on that. Everyone's been doing a great job with that. And I remind you, again, to speak nice and loud if you see the sign up in the back. Just speak louder, please, so everyone can hear you. So this year's candidates are Catherine Clear, Tom Laflamme, Lori Oliver, and Joseph Spadano. Did I say that name right?
Pretty close, yeah.
Yes,
It's
okay.
a pass, yeah.
Okay. They are running for three-year terms on the school committee. So we will begin opening statements with Catherine Clear.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. I have to say the last time I did this, it was on Zoom. So this is a very different, in my basement, by the way. So I didn't have an audience to talk to. So this is very, very nice. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Catherine. I'm a mom of 3 kids. I have a 13-year-old and twin 10-year-olds. I worked in public relations before retraining and moving into the world of education, where I became an elementary teacher and got my master's in education. And for a variety of reasons, ended up moving permanently over here 9 years ago and chose Westford to move to 5 years ago because the schools were good, but also it actually really reminded me of home. I'm currently the vice chair of the school committee, the chair of the Commission on Disability. For the last 3 years, I've served on the policy committee, which is a big task. I've also served on the Strategic District Improvement Plan Committee and the Superintendent Evaluation Committee, and I'm currently on both the school and town DEIs. So why am I running for a second term? I've learned a lot in the last 3 years. The biggest one is that change takes time, patience and passion. And I was part of the SDIP group in writing what is our plan for the up until 2026, and I want to see that through. And so I know we also have fiscal challenges ahead, and I want to see that through. And I'm hoping that for another 3 years I will get to finish what I started. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tom?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Tom Laflamme. I'm seeking your vote for school committee this year. I'd like to first thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, Ms. McNeil for moderating, my fellow candidates for being willing to put yourself out there to serve the community. I've been a resident of Westford with my wife and 2 kids since 2015, but I first joined the community in 2006 as a member of the technology department. I worked there for almost 10 years and continue to this day in municipal technology. I've also served this community as a member of the Finance Committee for the past 3 years, serving as Vice Chair for the last 2. I decided to run this year for school committee because I recognize the positive impacts that Westford Public Schools has had on our kids' lives, and I want to work to ensure that that is available to current children and children in the future as well. I started following the school committee very closely this year due to my assignment on the Finance Committee to report back what was going on with the school committee. Since that time, I have attended almost every school committee meeting, so I have a level of understanding of the issues that are currently under discussion and those that are coming forward soon. I look forward to the opportunity to bring my experience working in municipal government along with my willingness to listen to different perspectives to this school committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lori?
Hi, my name is Lori Oliver, and I'm running for a seat on the school committee, and I have lived in Westford for about 30 years. I have 2 adult daughters who attended the Westford Public Schools from grades K to 12 and graduated from Westford Academy. My oldest daughter attended Berklee College of Music and graduated and went on to become a composer in Seattle, Washington. My younger daughter is attending Mount Holyoke College and hopes to be an English teacher. My husband and I share home with our 2 dogs right now. You might see us walking around Westford, which we do frequently. I hold degrees in both English and music education from UMass Lowell. Before becoming a teacher, I worked as a journalist for the Nashua Telegraph for 4 years and covered all the Groton-Dunstable school committee meetings, so I have a good feel for the school committee meetings even before I became a teacher. I have taught music in Westford, both general music in the elementary school and chorus, for the past 32 years in 6 out of 9 of our school buildings that are currently open, and also at Cameron and Frost, which are no longer school buildings. And I have been teaching, I've been teaching for about 2 years before I decided to move to Westford, partly because of the wonderful school system and also because of the beautiful town, the natural beauty of Westford, as well as the sense of community that I found here. I've also been active as a volunteer in the Westford Girl Scouts for 23 years, first with my own daughters, and then I founded the Westford Girl Scout Chorus, which hosts various holiday events such as the tree lighting and the Festival of Trees and Wreaths across America. And last spring, when I was planning to retire, I realized that I've had all these experiences in Westford as a resident, a parent, a volunteer, and a teacher, and I would like to contribute to the school committee because I'm passionate about education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joe?
Yeah, I'd like to say thanks again to the League of Women Voters for giving everyone the opportunity to speak, and thanks to everyone for coming here to listen. Looking forward to sharing my thoughts and ideas with everybody. I was born and raised in Westford. I was born in 1988. My dad taught at WA for 35 years. Every Sunday we'd go to St. Catherine's Church. That would be followed by village store breakfast with Reno and Terry. We have French toast, and it was great. It was a real sense of community. Seeing everyone come into the village store, and that's what started me off in the community aspect. It really put a sense of pride in my community at a young age. But I'm a proud WA grad in 07. It's helped me to run my own business now for 10 years. My marketing classes and principles of management with Miss Bruno and Mrs. Canoyer probably helped that, so I give them respect for that. But my whole life, work ethic has been stressed upon me. My father pushed that on me at a young age, and I remember getting on the bus and on kindergarten, and he said, "I don't care what you get for grades. All I care about is your effort and conduct." And what I would like to see is that continuing in Westford Public Schools. And I have spent a great deal of my time so far meeting with several teachers, current and former, most of which have become good friends of mine, and we've kept in touch over the years. I'm constantly meeting with parents, talking to them, and just picking their brain, getting their concerns about what they'd like to see in Westford Public Schools. And I'm eager to serve, motivated, and I have 4 young kids that will be the 4th generation Spadanos in Westford, and I'd like to see them through their education if possible. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we now begin with questions. You'll each have 1 minute to answer the questions. And Tom, the first question will go to you first. And seems to be the question of the evening. Do you support the override? Why or why not? So you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Yes, I actually do support the override for multiple reasons. I have followed the budget process very closely, analyzing just about every line of every budget for this year. One of the biggest reasons that I do support it, especially from the school side, is that if the override does not pass, we're looking at significant cuts with direct service employees that will they'll be needed to meet the budget. These will be immediate and significant. And the last time that we had that type of change for our students was just a couple of years ago with COVID-19. And especially with some of the intervention programs that would be cut, we're looking at some of the kids that started school at the time that those last cuts happened. So for that reason, I do support this. I do believe that we may not know all of the impacts for the next 10 years, but we need to recognize them now.
Thank you, Lori.
So after teaching in the Westford Public Schools, I can honestly say that in the last 10 years or so, there have been cuts every year. They may not have been as significant as these proposed cuts, but they have whittled us down to the bare bone in some cases. I don't feel like the schools have the support they need now, let alone if this override passes. I don't think we would recognize our excellent school system after the override. So the morale in the staff and students, I think, would trend downward. We've already gone through a lot with COVID. The morale in some cases is low already. The quality of schools would trend downward, and I think our property values would trend downward. So for those of you who are being very practical, that's something to consider. And also, I would say that there are a number of programs. If you go to the Board of Assessors website, I am sympathetic to those that are suffering from increased taxes, and I would have you look through the programs and see if you qualify for any of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
I've given this issue considerable thought. I'm pro-education, and I want to support Westford Public Schools. But from everything I have done and looked up, passing the override will not solve the issues facing Westford and many other towns in Massachusetts. I think runaway inflation and fiscal mismanagement beyond our control have made it clear that if we pass the override, the town will most likely need to seek another in 2 to 3 years. Alarm bells should be going off, and that's concerning to me. And the town budget report on December 12th, 2023 suggested that the override of $9 million would leave a budget cliff for fiscal year 28 that could be mitigated by new growth, additional efficiencies or revenues, or additional operational override. So they're already talking about an override, but may be possible. And you're looking at new growth is trending 125% less in the past 10 years. So I don't see new growth being a solution.
Thank you. Catherine?
So I do support the override, but I think, with 1 minute to go, we could spend an hour here talking about all the nuances. If you've been on Facebook lately, you've probably seen all points of view. And I think that's been my biggest learning curve in this process, is that coming to what this override is a huge effort in compromise and collaboration and trying to support all groups in our community. But really, what does this boil down to? It boils down to very basic math. Within the constraints of Prop 2.5, in an ideal world, that would work. But when, on average, over the last 10 years, our inflation has been running at 3.1%, the math is always going to catch up with us at some point. And therefore, I support it, because I think by supporting our teachers and our school conditions, it is our student conditions and learning environment that we impact.
Thank you very much. The next question will go to you, Lori, first. Okay. So whether or not the override passes, what are the next steps for the school committee to ensure that Westford Public Schools meet the needs of all students?
So I think one of the really important things we need to think about is transparency and communication. I feel like there's a lack of trust, and I feel like all the boards really need to start working together. I heard the word master plan. I think that's a great idea. I think we could come up with one. I think we should prioritize and figure out what we need in the next coming years and work towards solutions now before they happen, so that we'll be ready.
Okay. Joe?
I think that's a great question. I actually like what Lori said. I think that was really nice. I would like to continue to research and study what Westford teachers need, and I'd like to help them thrive in their classrooms. I have questions about, what can we do to help them, and, for example, what's the cell phone policy in Westford? Humans can only do one cognitive task at a time, and I don't think that's helping our students or our teachers run a classroom. The bullying policy I'd like to look at. Are we improving student safety? Have they worked? Are they successful? They might be good. And I'd like to look at an emphasis on what the pathway to transitioning students off IEPs is, and try to get them off IEPs to be ready for the world at 18 when they graduate WA.
Thank you. Catherine?
So I consider this time a transition time in Westford Public Schools because we have a new superintendent, and so we've built a new strategic district improvement plan that even without the override passing one way or the other, it has given us a roadmap for what the next 3 years looks like. It's focusing on sustainability within our schools, it's focusing on the social emotional well-being of our students, and it's also looking at the fiscal responsibilities and bringing equity as well within to our district. The big thing for me is that I actually think professional development will be key in the coming years if we don't, is in particular with no override, but also with the impacts of what COVID has. We have very different students in our classroom now, and we have very different staff members in our classrooms. And I think it's really important that this professional development is going to set us up for the coming years ahead.
Thank you. Tom?
So regardless of how the vote for the override goes, we are facing fiscal challenges over the next several years. Even if the override passes, the school and town combined are facing over $2 million in cuts or reductions over the next 3 years. So work does need to start right now to try to find that. That work has to be collaborative between all members of the community: parents, teachers, students, administration, school committee, community at large. We need to listen to new ideas of how to solve old problems. I do want to challenge the idea of we've always done it this way, so we have to continue to do it this way. Our students learn differently today than they did 20 years ago, and we need to recognize that. And that may require some risk. It may take going out and trying something new that we may not know if it'll work, but we need to be willing to take that risk and admit that we made a mistake and backtrack if we need to. But yeah, we just need to work collaboratively.
Okay, thank you very much. Sticking with budgets, and Joe, this will go to you first. Westford has made it a goal to pay town and school staff salaries that meet the average wages for various benchmark communities. So what is your position on this approach to contract negotiations?
That's a good question. I think the way that they look at the DART trends is, the towns that are in that on DESI's website are apparently comparable. I don't think they're super comparable to Westford, so I would like to see that looked at. I think on the last school committee meeting, I believe Chu talked about maybe looking at surrounding towns as well, and that's part of their policy. And when they looked at that, they took the trend from DART, and they also compared it to our local towns. It's hard to find another school system like Westford or another town like Westford, but I think it can be done, and I think it should be talked about, and we should see, are these comparable towns, and are we comparing apples to apples as much as possible? And I'd be interested to work on that and get everyone's thoughts.
Thank you. Catherine?
I 100% agree that we should be paying our staff competitive average pay. To be honest, being a former teacher, I think everybody needs double the pay rises, but that's just my personal opinion. However, what I will say is that having seen the process in the last 3 years, I really feel that there was thorough transparency and research put into coming up with the benchmarks. The best practice across the state of Massachusetts when negotiating with our school staff is taking your DART districts. Unfortunately, some of those districts in our group aren't always the same as us fiscally, but we have also, as is best practice, added our adjacent towns to try and get a more realistic viewpoint of where we are financially. And that's always my goal in school committee, is that what is the best practice and what is happening on a statewide level, because I really believe that we have to show value, and this is really actually a bigger question of who we are as a town. What do we value as a community?
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I was an employee a number of years ago, and all that time ago, it was also market basket. It's a good practice to have a target that is defined. Whether, that target is moving always, but it is still a target, and it's a good negotiating point to have a policy in place that's where we need to be. If we continue to let our employees, in our case, the school, the teachers, if those salaries continue to dwindle and fall behind, we will lose our most productive staff and our biggest resource to our students. So I believe that is a good policy.
Thank you. Lori?
I think that after COVID especially, and several other instances in the last 20 or more years of Westford public school employees being paid below what other comparable towns are paid, that teachers and staff need to be paid fairly, and that's crucial for morale in the school system. That teachers struggle just like any other people out there. Sometimes their salaries are low and too low to survive on. I have seen teachers waitressing and doing other jobs because they could not afford to sustain their, they couldn't afford to sustain themselves and or their family on their pay. And I feel that teaching, if you've ever tried it, is exhausting. And you need a lot of support, and you need to feel that the town supports you. So I think it's very important.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question will start with you, Catherine. What are your views of the Strategic District Improvement Plan? And are there any objectives or initiatives that you would prioritize or change?
Well, in all transparency, I helped write it. So I am very passionate about it. The big thing for me as we went through the process of the Strategic District Improvement Plan, or SDIP for anyone, was putting equity at the heart of all our decisions and plans moving forward. Equity for our students, our staff, our family members. We've prioritised, we've planned out the objectives over the next 3 years and how we're going to achieve them. Dr. Chu just recently did his first kind of update on the end of this first year. To be honest, as a parent of students who have IEPs, the equity is probably the biggest component for me, because I know it can be a hard experience going through schools, and especially with COVID in. It's something I have always advocated for, which is our equity and inclusivity within our public schools, and that's key for me.
Thank you. Tom?
So I was first introduced to this really at the update the other night. I do believe that having a strategic plan district-wide is important. It does provide that roadmap. It does provide guidance on what the values and the priorities of the district are. Whether or not anything needs to be changed, I would say that given the fact that it's in its infancy, really the first year, that it should be just monitored and make sure that we're continuing along, but no changes should be made until we're able to make progress on what was already identified.
Thank you. Lori?
I'm passionate about a lot of the things in the SDIP. Equity, of course. I love that the initiative is Universal Design of Learning, which is a system of education where all students can access the curriculum in different ways, and allows a lot of flexibility, which I think is important for mental health. The mental health and wellness component is so important right now, especially. There are still students struggling with anxiety, struggling since COVID. I know some of them personally. It's not easy, and I think that we still need to focus on that. And of course, the climate roadmap as well, teaching students how to care about our environment. I think that's very important. So I support it 100%.
Thank you. Joe?
I would say, honestly, as a newcomer here, I'm not super familiar with it, and but as a newcomer and someone looking from more of the outside, I'd be eager to examine and understand it, and I'd be excited to meet with teachers and admin to see what they think about it and present that to the committee.
Thank you very much. The next question is from someone at home, so they sent in a question, and it goes to you, Tom, first. What have you done to prepare for serving on the school committee, and which subcommittee do you see yourself serving on, possibly?
So as I mentioned earlier, I followed the budget cycle very closely this year. Actually went through every line of the school committee budget this year, which was very tedious. And I sat through hours of meetings, listening to not only the budget discussions, but hearing what else was going on. I've also talked to former school committee members to get a sense of where the challenges lie. I could see myself on the finance subcommittee. I do have the experience coming from the finance committee, but also municipal government and municipal finance, but also policy. So I would see sitting wherever I was needed, and I think as a committee we would see where everyone's gifts fit best. So,
thank you, Lori.
So I've been preparing for this for almost a year since I started thinking about retiring. I started talking to a lot of people in town, including former school committee members, townspeople, and really thinking about what the whole process was. And then that followed with working on my platform, things that I feel strongly about, plans that I would like to see, things I'd like to see happen. And then, of course, there's the purchasing of signs and postcards and getting a volunteer committee together, getting your nomination papers together, all of that. It's been a wonderful process. I've learned a lot, and I hope to be able to learn even more on the school committee.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, I'll be honest, I had about 3 months to prepare for this, and I kind of was not thrown in this, but willingly jumped in feet first. I've always had a big interest in government and town government, and I think I'm at a good point in my life where, especially having 4 young kids about to enter the school system, it would be in their and my best interest if I could get on the school committee. I'd like to give back my time to the town that raised me, and I feel like I could help, and I could definitely see myself on the finance and budgeting task force of the school committee. And I have a wife that stays home with 4 kids in Westford on a single income in 2024. So if that doesn't prove my ability to budget, and I don't know what does. So, but yeah.
Thank you. Catherine.
Well, I'm just coming to the end of completing my first 3-year internship, non-paid, on the school committee. So I've been preparing for this role for quite a while. As anybody is aware, I have served on the policy committee for the last 3 years, and I'm a glutton for punishment. Just a word of warning, policy committees meet every 2 weeks, and the meetings can run between 2 and 3 hours at a time, so heads up. And it's something that I'm very passionate about, because what I've learned in particular about being on the policy committee is that it really is a chance to create a guidebook for everybody and to create kind of a process for how we want things to happen within the town, and that in a balanced and fair way that takes everybody's viewpoints and into account. I've also really enjoyed setting up the superintendent evaluation subcommittee, which was the first, and we put a lot of process into place, and it's something I hope to come back with at some point. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to do a kind of a lightning question. So if you could come up with maybe a sentence or two to answer this question so we can get to more of these questions.
Does our time go down then?
Yes, it goes down a little bit. Lightning.
No one told me about this. So.
Do you support later start times for our middle and high school students? So in like a sentence, and we'll start with Lori.
So I think that later start times would be very helpful and healthy for secondary students, and many studies have shown that. However, over many years, there's also been problems associated with taking care of siblings who were, and so forth, at sports and after-school jobs. So there are challenges to that. But I think, just as a question without any other considerations, that it's probably a great idea.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
I'm an early riser myself, but I would. I think the interesting thing at Westford is where we have the busing issue with K through 2, 3 through 5 in middle school and high school. That might be what's going to hang us up on that. But I'd like to learn more about it and get everyone's opinion on it. Again, when I went to WA a lifetime ago, it wasn't so bad getting there that early and getting home early. But I definitely see where there could be issues for other people with different age siblings.
Thank you. Catherine?
I 100% agree with it. I actually currently sit on the later school start time subcommittee. You will have a report in the next 6 to 8 weeks about the busing, which we know is a key problem to solving the solution. All the data and research shows us that's the right thing for teenage development. And in terms of the challenges, I really do feel that we will have a way to resolve those challenges. Yeah.
Thank you. Tom?
I believe that other districts have made adjustments similar to this. I do believe in the science that I have seen about this, that teenage body clocks are actually synced to go to bed later. Regardless of what time we ask them to get up, they are going to fall asleep later. So I do believe that is something that we need to pursue and investigate.
Okay, thank you. So this will be our last question, and Joe, you'll go first. What specific steps should the school committee take to better inform all members of the community, including those who do not have children in the schools, about what's going on in the school department?
That's a good question. I think there's many avenues with social media for what it is. But as far as maybe gathering residents' information and creating some kind of email communication, that could be voluntary. They could submit them, and it could be an email that's automatically sent out. That's just an idea off the top of my head. But I think communication is key in any department, and that would help.
Thank you. Catherine?
To be honest, the one big answer I feel like is that we need a better website. I know it's costing money, so that don't taboo subject. But I actually think right now we have a very strong presence on social media. I host monthly office hours for people to come and engage. We have emails. I do think we have a lot of good strategies in place, but I think the biggest key that we're missing is a really solid, user-friendly landing page. And it's something I would like to and hope to explore longer term.
Thank you. Tom?
I think public education is a big thing. Educating on the methods of getting the communication, whether it be signing up for the alerts of agendas for a school committee, or it took a long time to be able to get off of the Abbott email list after I have an Abbott child. So I do not believe that we limit the weekly emails from the schools to be just parents of current students. Making those things available. There is a lot of communication that does go out to the community. It just does not go out to the broad community. So expanding that and expanding the knowledge of how to get to those.
Thank you. Lori?
I agree that there are a lot of different communications electronically. There's Facebook. I see all kinds of information on Facebook about the school committee activities from some of the school committee members too, which is really great. I too may be still receiving some emails from schools in Westford to keep me updated years later. So I do think there's a huge attempt by teachers and administrators and the school committee to keep parents informed, to keep community members informed. And I would agree that a wonderful website that's really up to date is key, and I think it's money well spent.
Thank you. Okay, I think we did everyone, right? Okay, so we're now up to closing statements. You will each have 1 minute to explain to voters why they should vote for you. And we'll start with Joseph and go right down the table.
All right, awesome. I'd like to again thank the League of Women Voters and everyone coming here and listening and giving me the opportunity to speak. And really, it's my first time publicly speaking, so I survived. I'm most grateful for that opportunity, and I promise if elected, I will serve to the best of my abilities, and I am young and motivated and have a vested interest in the community. So I would appreciate your vote. And again, if anyone would like to speak to me, I will make myself available, and I would be happy to talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori.
First of all, I'd like to echo that. Thank you to the League of Women's Voters, WestfordCAT, all the candidates, the audience here and at home tonight. Now more than ever, Westford Public Schools needs a supportive voice from the school committee. The town needs clear communication, transparency, honesty, and integrity. We need to work as an entire town with all the boards on shared goals and priorities as a community. I believe my experiences as a resident, a volunteer, a parent, and an educator here in Westford will help me to effectively communicate and collaborate with the school committee and the town to achieve positive results for our schools. I'm committed to focus on social emotional learning, holistic education, and creative and responsible fiscal decisions. The time, energy, and wisdom born of experience to devote to being a volunteer in this role, and I want to be a positive voice to help our students and school system thrive into the future. I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay. Thank you for everyone for giving of your time to be here tonight. I know that there are many challenges and hard decisions facing the school committee over the next 3 years. If elected, I would commit to devoting the time required to provide careful consideration, thoughtful feedback, and ask important questions to all options and discussions presented. My experience working in municipal government, paired with my experience on the Westford Finance Committee, provide me with a unique perspective to bring to the school committee discussions. This, along with my desire to maintain the legacy of high-quality education in Westford, makes me a good choice to serve Westford on the school committee. Thank you for listening, and I hope you will consider voting for me for school committee on May 7th.
Thank you, Catherine.
And again, to round off all the thank yous to everyone tonight, the League of Women Voters, fellow candidates, members of the audience, WestfordCAT. As always, it's lovely to have that this forum it's really something I think is important and valuable for our community when making a decision on May 7th. And really what I wanted to do in this kind of moment is actually say, you know, what to take away from tonight. And I think the most important thing is to stop and think, who of these candidates do you think has the time, engagement, collaboration, patience to be on a board in Westford right now? You know, it takes a lot more than showing up for meetings on a Monday night to really create change and bring effective progress to our schools. And I hope that I have managed to demonstrate my commitment to this town in the last 3 years in engaging in conversations, committees, boards, events, and I just hope that reflects when you make that choice on May 7th, and to remember to make the clear choice.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the candidates for school committee. Let's give them a round of applause. And we will now hear from League spokesperson Vicki Geary.
Thank you. We've covered a variety of topics here tonight, but recognize that we couldn't get to all the questions. As we talked about at the top of the hour, we not only got 65 questions beforehand, but there were questions that came tonight. So if you desire answers to other additional questions we haven't covered, the contact information for all the candidates is located in the voter's guide. And we would encourage you to reach out directly to each candidate. In fact, if you have one question, ask it to all the candidates you want to ask it. The more information, the better. We would also say that you can find the voter's guide not only on the League website, but the WestfordCAT as well. Thank you to Heather for coming out and moderating tonight. Thank you, fabulous job. And thank you to all the candidates who participated tonight. We really appreciate it because an educated constituency is a smart constituency. It makes good decisions. And finally, I'd like to thank the WestfordCAT for, again, recording and broadcasting this event, and to all the League members who worked so diligently behind the scenes before this night and tonight to make this possible. And please remember to vote by May 7th, either by mail or in person. And we hope to see you at town meeting this Saturday, 9 a.m., Westford Academy. Bring your sunscreen.